magazine of the screen. Living glimpses of history in the making. Presented as a public service by Standard Oil Company.
With an uneasy truce in Korea, the vanguard of 5,000 Indian troops arrives in Seoul, many of them wearing colorful native turbans, en route to Munsan to take custody of prisoners of war refusing repatriation. 15,000 anti-communist Chinese POWs and 8,000 North Koreans head for Munsan too, steadfast in their refusal to return to Red Rule, eager in their determination to remain among free men. Meanwhile, a GI project of peace, a new school is opened in Yangju. And are the youngsters eager to start? But first, they pledge allegiance to their republic and offer thanks to American servicemen whose contributions built it. Construction of this church also was made possible by the generosity of GIs who see their dream come true. Faith still shines brightly in Korea. But the United Nations cannot lower her guard. Spilling out of giant transports, paratroops take part in the biggest training exercises since the armistice. American soldiers sharpen airborne striking power in Operation Backdoor. Operation Homecoming. In the United States, reunites President and Mrs. Eisenhower with their only son, John, home from a year of frontline duty in Korea. A happy moment for the Eisenhowers. Returning too is General William Dean, released at Panmunjom after 3 years as a Red POW. Tired and worn, but covered with glory, an old soldier comes back. Another homecoming in England finds United Kingdom troops arriving in Southampton. Ashore are their loved ones, seeking the faces of the heroes for whom they have waited so long. The boys are back. In a twinkling, the months of captivity are swept away in the breathless joy of reunion. Safe again, British soldiers who shared with the other allies the privation, hardship, suffering, and frustration of Korea. The future of Chancellor Konrad Adenauer's pro-American government is at stake in the crucial West German parliamentary elections. Armed guards watch rail stations to intercept communist agents arriving from the East Zone to sabotage the voting. And back they go where they came from. Adenauer, friend of the free world, casts his ballot. Meanwhile, reinforced police guards handle communist agitators who have managed to slip through. In a resounding triumph for the West, Adenauer wins a smashing victory. Near the red zone border, meanwhile, tanks rumble through the village of Grünberg as American, French, and British troops join in NATO war games. It's Europe's first atomic maneuvers, with both teams launching mock atomic attacks as NATO prepares against possible aggression from the east. Back in West Berlin's Olympic Stadium, the city's 3,000-man police force puts on a spectacular show. The whip-like precision of the men before a tremendous crowd reflects their readiness for any emergency in red-encircled West Berlin. The tensions that grip Berlin are forgotten by the first group of youngsters boarding a United States Air Force plane for a month's holiday in the western sector. The Children's Airlift, as the project is called, whisks the first of 1,000 youngsters to Frankfurt, and the start of what will be for most of the travelers their first vacation. Some will be guests of British and German families. Others stay at an American camp where there are heaping portions of food for all, and even double helpings if there's room for it. An act of hope and a lesson in democracy for the youngsters of a beleaguered, divided Berlin. Sultan of Morocco is marked for death as he rides to Muslim prayer services. Now the assassination attempt. The attacker knifes a guard but is clubbed to the ground in a frenzied, frantic few seconds. The attempt is foiled, as shown in this astonishing on-the-spot camera record. The aged Sultan, shaken but unhurt, continues on to offer prayers for his deliverance. The stricken Liberian freighter Greenville, lashed by 80-mile-an-hour winds and pounded by 50-foot-high waves, groans helplessly in mid-Atlantic, a hazardous haven for 26 seamen. Now a dramatic saga of brave men against the merciless sea, filmed by Dr. Walter Hodson of Cincinnati, a passenger aboard the Ile de France. The liner's crewmen man the lifeboats in a daring attempt to rescue the Greenville's crew huddled under the bridge at upper left. The sea continues its savage beating as one by one the men abandon ship, dropping into the icy waters to await the arrival of lifeboats. The ship yields to the Atlantic's wrath. 2 of her crew perish in the wild waters, but 24 are snatched to safety and carried to the storm-tossed Ile de France, leaving behind the Greenville, doomed and empty. Tiny bits of art, postage stamps, are exhibited in Milan. Italy's president is among the visitors. The artist's design is scaled down photographically in making the engraving for the stamp. These were designed by the late Corrado Mazzana, a Roman painter. The careful penwork and precise detail of the stamps emphasize the artist's skill. His big drawings lose none of their meticulous craftsmanship, even when reduced many times. This stamp honors Galileo, the Italian astronomer, and this one commemorates St. Catherine. Details are preserved in the tiny engravings from which stamps are printed. Mazzana also designed stamps for Vatican City, and while he wasn't a famous artist, Mazzana's work is in steady demand by every Italian who writes a letter. From art in miniature to art in majestic size, and the unending pursuit of perfection is essential whether the work be large or small. At 84, Pietro Canonica's gifted hands still carve into marble qualities of firmness and determination. Marconi, the inventor of the wireless, was among kings and great statesmen who posed for Canonica. The delicate features of women have been captured as easily by his genius. Heroic proportions mark some of his work, as in this equestrian statue of a king, and even slaves were his subjects. This was executed in Russia and tells the story of land slaves freed by Tsar Alexander III. Such work won Canonica undying fame. Almost alive, aren't they? Riding out of the past is the last Tsar of Russia, Nicholas II, and his family. Nicholas asked Canonica to execute this work at his court. And babyhood's fleeting charm lives forever.
Grand Coulee Dam in Washington State, the world's biggest concrete structure. Behind it is stored water from the mighty Columbia River, water to transform 1 million acres of wasteland into productive farms. Through these huge pipes, water is lifted 280 feet from the dam's reservoir to outlets at the headworks, where it pours forth at a peak rate of more than 6 billion gallons a day. More than enough water, if pumped at full capacity, to supply every 24 hours half a dozen cities the size of New York. The world's largest pumps are operated at Grand Coulee Dam by electricity to lift the water used for irrigation. The dam itself supplies the electric current. In fact, the production of electricity is the other major purpose of the dam. The water taken for agricultural purposes after being lifted from the lake behind the dam flows out of another reservoir to start a twisting journey of 60 miles or more through canals, tunnels, and siphons before it arrives on some farmer's land. Into the distribution system rushes the water from its storage reservoir and on to the 6,000 square miles lying in the Big Bend of the Columbia River. Pipe-fed irrigation ditches carry the water through most of the area by gravity. 80% of the land it benefits is privately owned. Water on the land, and on the land, crops grow again in the Columbia Basin. The story of fire, told through magic. Fire magic that's entertaining and educational, too. The magician is Dr. Llewellyn Hurd, who likes to play with fire. A research chemist, he studies oil processes and products. Some of the products, this rubbery grease, for instance, are most unusual. But the principal subject of his research is fire. Here, a sheet of chemically treated paper begins to char when exposed to air, outlining a picture of grandfather. A chemistry lesson with an artistic flourish. And now, a combustion prank to startle even Dr. Hurd. This one through our own magic, camera magic. With alcohol and chromic acid, no one needs a match. The combustion is spontaneous. Next, sulfuric acid and sugar, a compound that grows and grows and smells just terrible. Abracadabra alakazam, sugar burn and sulfur bubble. Presto, liquids change color before your eyes. Smoke rings, not from cigarettes or cigars, but phosphine, which bubbles through the water and burns as soon as it reaches air. A ringer in Dr. Hurd's bag of combustion tricks. Mix powdered wood with fire, and it's almost explosive. Again. But playing with fire can be hazardous. Dr. Hurd loses more fingers that way. Oh well, 4 are almost as good as 5. What's the basket for? Fire fun and facts through Dr. Llewellyn Hurd's amazing fire magic. Amid temperatures averaging 120 degrees in the searing Mojave Desert, the Army puts soldiers wearing special uniforms through tests to find out how equipment and men would survive in blistering desert warfare. A pair of very durable GIs, dummies Joe and Jake, are wired for heat tests. Soldiers are wired, too, to study the effects of heat on light and dark uniforms. Off on a 12-mile hike, destination nowhere. Wires connect instruments measuring reaction to heat and exertion. The GIs are carefully checked for ill effects. As the old Army ditty goes, what do you do in the infantry? You march, you march, you march. This is Amazon Annie, the first atomic cannon, undergoing tough maneuverability tests. Sharp turns aren't any problem for the huge weapon, which fires atomic or standard shells. It can travel 35 miles an hour, and despite its ponderous 85 tons, Amazon Annie rolls smoothly along, even over bridges built for less than half its weight. Its immense bulk is distributed on 2 transporters, so that the cannon can negotiate standard bridges. The gun fires an atomic shell. A mushroom of smoke rises more than 20 miles away in the first pictures released by the Defense Department of America's new atomic weapon in action. Testing men and equipment, searching, probing for new ways to bolster the nation's defense as military research goes on.
More than 300 natives in this primitive village in British Malaya are today taking their first big step toward civilization. they've burned the remains of their settlement after harvesting all the crops they can carry and moving their houses aboard rafts. Now they're ready to sail to a new site 25 miles away and a life they've never known before, where they'll find such things as doctors, schools for their children, and skilled advice in farming. But before they can reach their new home, a dangerous journey faces the fleet of crudely built rafts. Due to a dry season, the river Labir has been falling fast. Youths and men at the sweeps are ready to challenge the disaster that lurks in the mudbanks, rocks, and rapids. Still another danger lies along shore. Communist terrorists are operating in the state of Kelantan, although it's a British protectorate. The fleet is approaching the rapids. Aboard the rafts, loose articles are safely stowed, household goods made fast. Steadily move the hand-powered sweeps. Steady eyes are on the river. Rapids ahead. On shore, Malayan home guards constantly patrol against the communists. And finally, the natives near their new home, where the government of Kelantan State has everything in readiness. The 19-acre site has been carved out of virgin jungle. Land for cultivation lies nearby, and buildings have already been erected. British and Malayan officials inspect the village as the natives pitch in to complete the work. Modern tools in native hands make the chores go faster. In this northeastern Malayan state, the natives are chiefly tillers of the soil, and there's plenty of work ahead before a crop can be harvested. But there are also new homes, new experiences, new sights for the natives. From the state's welfare workers come food and clothes to help get them started in their new community. The youngsters quickly adapt themselves to their surroundings. Household chores are well underway. Dangers of the journey almost forgotten, and the old settlement that housed so many memories seems far away as the villagers begin their new life.
A postage stamp commemorates Sagamore Hill, President Theodore Roosevelt's home. Sagamore Hill, the rambling frame house at Oyster Bay, New York, once the most famous home in America, where national and international history was made by our 26th President, Theodore Roosevelt. He was born here in New York City in 1858. At the age of 8, he was a sickly, delicate youngster. 10 years later, Teddy was a student at Harvard. To build his health, he became a frontiersman. And for 3 years, a cowboy in the Dakotas. As a colonel in the Rough Riders, which he helped to organize during the Spanish-American War, he led the charge at San Juan Hill in Cuba, smashing the spirit of the Spanish defenders. At war's end, he was elected governor of New York. In 1901, at 43, he became America's youngest president, and later the first chief executive to fly. With a patriotic passion, he dynamically championed the American way. Now, from the News Magazine Library, most complete library of news films in the world, come unforgettable motion pictures of his later life. A month after leaving office, Teddy was on the high seas, bound for Africa and the big game that stalks the dark continent. He spent 10 months among the natives on a dangerous jungle safari. Returning home, he found Europe drifting toward World War I. When America entered, he hurried to the White House to pledge his support to President Wilson in the critical days that lay ahead. Americans everywhere across the country joined in exciting, spontaneous tributes to the Stars and Stripes. The former president, tirelessly calling the nation to arms, toured the country. At giant Liberty Loan rallies, he pleaded for every American support and was joined by the immortal French actress Sarah Bernhardt, fiery and vigorous at 72. But the old soldier, shown here visiting the famous Rainbow Division in training, wanted to do more. He volunteered to raise a division of his own and serve as its commander in Europe. The offer, however, could not be accepted. He received his setback graciously, continuing to tour American camps, stirring the troops that turned out by the hundreds of thousands to hear his voice. With the armistice, he returned to Sagamore Hill and the neighbors who dropped by often to chat. Teddy was never too busy to talk with them. From one of those talks, now being re-recorded from an old phonograph cylinder, you will hear the only record of Theodore Roosevelt's voice believed in existence. The soundtrack is at left, an actual photograph of his voice. Listen.
I wish to see you boys as good citizens in the same way I'd expect any one of you to act in a football game. In other words, don't flinch, don't foul, and hit the line hard.
For a quarter of a century, Teddy Roosevelt and Sagamore Hill symbolized a vigorous, bustling nation. Today, the house and the empty porch, with their many memories, are a national shrine, a place of pilgrimage for Americans who cherish the concepts of truth, justice, and courage to which Theodore Roosevelt offered a lifetime of devotion. In the sitting room, it seems only yesterday that tea was being served by the gracious Edith Kermit Roosevelt. The nursery, like all nurseries, remains cluttered with the toys of the late president's 4 sons and 2 daughters. There are teddy bears, of course, for the toy was named after the popular Teddy with his official blessings. To the dining room downstairs came leaders of state during the 7 years that Sagamore Hill served as America's summer White House. The silk bedspread was a gift from the Empress of China. And here is Teddy's shaving stand with brush and mug. The trophy room, his favorite room, the mounting board for the trophies of hunting expeditions and mementos of his strenuous life. Theodore Roosevelt, one of the most versatile men ever to become president, surveys the fruits of a lifetime of rich adventure and the amazing assortment of gifts showered on him by admirers the world over. Here, too, draped over the axle of his plane, is the flag from the grave of his youngest son, Quentin, killed in France in 1918. The Rough Riders ensign recalls the daring exploits of Colonel Teddy, a beloved figure. His many trophies attest to his matchless marksmanship as a big game hunter. Off the trophy room is the library, stocked with the books Teddy read unceasingly or wrote himself, and where he worked while at Sagamore Hill. Tirelessly he toiled at this desk until death in 1919 stilled his fighting spirit. But the rich legacy he left America lives on, the inspiring story of a frail, sickly youngster who made himself strong by determined effort and who dedicated his every energy to his country. On a stone nearby, his creed: keep your eyes on the stars and keep your feet on the ground. The qualities of Theodore Roosevelt are the qualities which preserve our nation: love for people, faith in life, and above all, love of country.